All right, so we are recording now. And yeah, so I am very happy to introduce our two speakers that we have here today. So we have Aubrey Larsen and Jake Powell. And I am actually just going to let them introduce themselves as they get started on the presentation. And so, yeah, take it away, Aubrey and Jake.
Thank you, Cooper. It's awesome to be with you this afternoon. The title of our conversation today is Let's Get Real About Regional Collaborations. That's something Aubrey and I have been involved in multiple different ways, and we want to talk to you about some of our experiences and stories, as well as this idea of getting real and having a really honest conversation about what's going well and what's not. But first, a little bit about us. I'll introduce myself and then give Aubrey a second to introduce herself. But my name is Jake Powell. I'm an extension specialist at Utah State University in the Department of Landscape Architecture and Environmental Planning. As such, I get an opportunity to teach and work with students, as well as my extension role gets me out in communities doing outreach, as well as developing programs and educational opportunities for citizens, as well as people here in the state of Utah. Aubrey, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Jake. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on a Tuesday evening. My name's Aubrey Larsen. I work for the state of Utah's Community Development Office, where we create tools, guides, and resources primarily for rural Utah. And along this journey with the Community Development Office, I became the coordinator for the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative, which I'll share a little bit more information about shortly. But really, it's a celebration of starry night skies and trying to help people understand the importance of landscape scale conservation. And I also want to introduce Bob, the monster. He's from Solving Complex Issues Incorporated. He's kind of just here, you know, he's like just overshadowing everything we do. And we just wanted to recognize Bob and invite him to, you know, come along for the ride today. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jake.
Thanks, Aubrey. I wanted to start out by asking the folks here a question, and I'm just going to put it in the chat. Take a second to think about it first, and then type in your response, but don't hit submit until I ask you to. That'll keep people from being influenced by other people's opinions. So the question is, in your opinion, what is the most pressing challenge that you know of when it comes to night sky preservation and enhancement? So take a minute and think about that question. Type in a quick response, but don't hit submit until I ask you to. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about it and submit that question, or the answer to that question. Okay, I'll give you about 30 seconds. I need Jeopardy music or something to play in the background. That would be good. Make this feel like a quiz show. All right, go ahead, hit submit or hit enter and submit those. All right, these are great. You can look through them. I'm going to look through them as well. Getting people to consider lights that meet IDA standards, awareness of the public. The challenge is how cheap it is to light things up. Yeah. Awareness, educating people, public opinion, awareness, political landscape, and don't tell me what to do. Yeah, totally. These are tough challenges that obviously you as members of the IDA are looking into. One of the challenges I see is that a lot of what we work with are these wicked problems. They're large scale, they're complicated, they're interconnected. Maybe they look a little bit like this, if that makes sense. It's kind of this interconnected knot that lacks clarity in their aim as well as their solution. And I think some of the challenges that you guys highlighted are pointing at these wicked problems. One of the challenges to that, if we want to engage these kind of problems and we have to think and act at a certain scale, it's really hard to do when we're stuck in silos, for lack of better terms. And I think personally that dark skies are a really interesting multidisciplinary and cross-boundary challenge that I think points to this idea that they are wicked. And why I bring that up is Aubrey and I are both bridge builders by nature, and I think by our personality types. So we're always looking for ways to engage wicked problems and also engage them in places where collaboration can help maybe unravel some of those knots. Both Aubrey and I have been really fortunate to work with other bridge builders to create places and spaces where people can come together and share ideas, their wisdom, and hopefully their frustrations as well. With that said, what we found is there's really no perfect recipe, and often in our work, there's not a recipe at all. So Aubrey and I sort of engage some of these programs where there's not a path forward we're repeating, and it's kind of a grand experiment. And that's kind of where we're at with dark sky efforts in our region. And so we wanted to, as I mentioned, share some of our efforts with those here from IDA Utah in hopes that we can maybe find a way to work together and move the needle on dark sky preservation forward in our region. And with that said, the title of this was Getting Real. Aubrey and I talked as we prepared this presentation. We didn't really want to focus on the flowery stories about everything going right and these perfect scenarios that sometimes you hear about and then wonder why they're not working in your community, because things aren't always great, and there's challenges with any kind of collaboration. And we wanted to highlight that there are some challenges, there are some frustrations, there's missed opportunities, there's times when things don't go right for a variety of reasons. And we wanted to share with you our experiences that are real, in hopes that it will open up a space where you'll share your experiences as well. So the format will be, Aubrey and I will be sharing some information about projects we've been working on. And then we both Aubrey and I really want to hear from you. And we want to end our presentation with more of a conversation. So the actual presentation aspects will be pretty quick, and then we want to have a conversation with all of you. So this will be interactive, so be ready for that. So with that, I want to let Aubrey talk about some of the projects she's worked on, and then I'll talk about one that I've been working on as well.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Hopefully, we're trying out some technology here, so hopefully slides are advancing. Thumbs up, yes. Awesome. Okay, so collaboration at different scales. What I want to do during this segment of our presentation is walk you through 3 different examples of real life collaborative efforts. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're working on, and then describe real breakthroughs, real challenges, and the path forward. And that's not to say that I have all the answers, because I don't, but I wanted to share some things that have worked for me personally. Along this journey, working with different people and collaborating. So the first one I wanted to share is the Southeastern Utah Night Sky Reserve. I hope some folks on this call have heard of it. I know a couple of you have. So a little bit of background. In 2017 was when conversations began around this initiative, and there were talks with the San Juan County Commissioner just talking about this as an idea. And I know you're familiar with IDA's Dark Sky Places program. So there's 5 different designations, one of which is a dark sky reserve. And I think a dark sky reserve designation is one of the most challenging, just because it involves so many different stakeholders rather than just a community or just a park. It can include a variety of different landowners, as well as the scale. It can be huge. And in fact, if this dark sky reserve effort is successful someday, it would be the largest in the world. But I got involved in 2019. I was asked to kind of take on a leadership facilitation role, and I've been involved ever since. And we've kind of had some ups and downs, and I'm excited to kind of share some of those things. Hopefully they resonate with you. I think we're all experiencing some challenges right now. But the mission for the Dark Sky Reserve effort is to celebrate Southern Utah's unique rural character and dynamic landscapes by preserving the region's heritage of starry night skies for present and future generations. And you can kind of see this map on the right side showing the proposed boundary for this reserve. So it is massive. It would be over 20,000 square miles. So here's some breakthroughs that we've had. This effort has involved a broad segment of people. So we've had state entities like my community development office have been involved, the tourism office. We've had local community leadership that live in this area. We've had different parks people involved, national parks, state parks, and I'm really proud that we had so many different people involved because these are the stakeholders in this region. And it's not everyone, but it was a pretty good representation of people who live and work in this region. Early on, we recognized the importance of language. You'll see that we call it a night sky reserve instead of a dark sky reserve. So we took some time to think about who lives here, who are the stakeholders, what's important to them, what kind of language would resonate. So using night sky reserve, words like heritage, rural character, those kinds of things to really communicate well with the people who live here. So that was important for this collaborative effort. It was also a very ambitious effort. I mean, go big or go home, right? And I also think it's a pretty well-defined vision. We understood exactly what we were trying to do from the beginning. And then last of all, branding. Dark skies are inherently very visual and just beautiful astrophotography and really seeing these starry night skies and these landscapes. I think branding can be huge. And early on, we wanted to make sure that we captured all of the incredible locations in this region. So you can see these are some little business cards that have different locations that would be in the preserved or the proposed reserve boundaries. So trying to represent all of these different locations. And then another person had this great idea, why don't we call this Night Skyland? I had just come back from a vacation in Disneyland. So I think Night Skyland came from that, but just thinking of ways to really communicate what we value, what we're trying to accomplish, and how incredible this part of Utah really is. So what were some challenges? First of all, it's been really hard to determine actionable next steps. There's not like this guidebook they hand you when you go into a dark sky reserve or other dark sky place effort. So we really struggled, like, what do we do next? Or who do we talk to next? That's always been really challenging. COVID-19, I think COVID brought a lot of challenges to this world. And we were at a stage where we wanted to start approaching communities and having one-on-one conversations, and that just didn't happen. People on our working group team had some financial issues, job changes, so there was a lot of challenges that came from COVID that we could never have anticipated. Burnout, who feels burnt out or tired? I think we're all pretty tired. It's hard to live in this virtual world and keep pressing on, and people get tired, and that happened to this working group as well. We lost some local investment and involvement, which is critical. I mean, this isn't something that should come from the outside in, but from the inside out. So when we lost some of those local communities, that was really hard because we're like, well, we can't just enforce this on people. We need those locals. We need this grassroots initiative. And then there's limitations due to our own jobs or positions. I work for the state, so there's some things I can do and can't do, and that's inherent in any kind of position that you might fill. And then resource scarcity. Wouldn't it be great to have a pot full of money to throw at initiatives like that? But we just don't. So people volunteered to purchase a website, make videos. It was very scrappy in nature, but resource scarcity is a real part of collaborative efforts. So what's the path forward? Like I said, I don't have all the answers, but here's some things we actually discussed earlier today. Why not find out why some actors backed off or left the initiative? What could we learn from them? What were some of the reasons they could no longer be involved? Maybe we can learn from those things and improve. The right people at the right time. It's an opportunity to approach some new people, get some fresh eyes, some fresh blood, have some new perspectives, involve different groups. There's that opportunity. could we scale back? Does it have to be this huge dark sky reserve, or could it be smaller? Could it just focus on Moab and Arches, for example? There's ways we could re-envision the scale of this project. Juice it up with a new ask. Originally, we were asking people to be involved in this cool new initiative to establish a Southeastern Utah Night Sky Reserve, but maybe we could change that a little bit. Maybe it becomes a star trail or something a little bit different. And this ties into this last bullet, which I just learned about, understanding difference between an interest and a position. So for example, a position is there should be a dark sky reserve in Southeastern Utah, or this community should have a lighting ordinance. But if we take a step back, really, what are we interested in? We want to protect night skies. We want to enjoy this resource for generations to come. And that's really what the interest is. So before we push our positions on people, really understanding what brings us together around a common cause, I think is important moving forward with the Southeastern Utah Night Sky Reserve effort. So moving to a second example, the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative. I've been the coordinator for about 3.5 years now, and it's been such an incredible opportunity. And it's been challenging, but I've learned so much. And in a nutshell, the Dark Sky Cooperative empowers landscape scale dark sky conservation efforts and leads the way in protecting natural darkness as a precious resource in collaboration with local, state, federal, tribes, businesses, nonprofits, educational institutions, and community partners throughout this region. So you can see kind of the region on the map. It's really the Four Corners states. So some breakthroughs, and this kind of just skims the top. I mean, it's so hard to distill breakthroughs over 3.5 years, but these kind of stood out to me. So creating tools, guides, and resources that people need. This picture you see is kind of fun. Early on, if you remember John Barentine from IDA, former director of public policy, he took this picture, and it's of a New Zealand notice board in a community. And what the arrow is pointing to is a dark sky assessment guide that I helped create early on. So it made it to New Zealand. We've gone global. So it was just incredible to see that people were using these resources. So really understanding, what do people need, and what are the tools they need to accomplish their goals? And also having great partners. I mean, IDA is the reason that this guide made it to New Zealand. So that was incredible to see. Early on, and I'll talk about this as a challenge in a minute, I wasn't really sure, what does the Dark Sky Cooperative even do? And just looking at some of the work that had been done in the past and things I was involved with at the present, I set some clear objectives for myself, and that really helped. I also started doing monthly spotlights. So I invite someone who touches on the dark skies conversation, have them talk about the work they're doing, about their community, about a project, or even a topic that they're passionate about. And that I share that with our network. And that's been helpful, not just to share great information, but also to get to know people. So that's been helpful for this collaborative effort as well. And then stand on the shoulders of giants, or you could just say, don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, people have gone before you, rely on them, ask questions. I've got a great network of people that I'm like, hey, I don't know the answer to this question. What would you advise? And so there's great resources out there. So rely on people who know things and are the experts. Real challenges. Like I mentioned, leadership and direction early on. I was like, I really don't understand what a dark sky cooperative is, and I'm not sure what direction we're heading. And that's been challenging. Just looking at what we do, there's overlap with different dark sky entities. I mean, IDA Utah, and I think we do some similar things. So just understanding where are the gaps, how do we fill those, how do we reduce redundancy has been challenging. Long-term sustainability and funding. This began as a National Park Service initiative, and they've funded it since it began, but they didn't want to be the sole supporter or funder forever. So part of what I've done over the last 3.5 years is looking into potential partnerships or ways we could make this a sustainable effort. And that's been hard. I think we struggle with sustainability and funding. Limited time and capacity. This used to be someone's full-time job, and I had to kind of distill it down to a few hours a week with my position at the state. But an opportunity that came from this was being able to integrate the work with my state position, because so many communities had an interest in this topic. but time and capacity are huge. And then again, what should Dark Sky Cooperative do moving forward? That's challenging. And should it change? Should it adapt to different challenges and questions people have? So the path forward, what does that look like? Well, we have a new home. I'm excited to say that the Institute of Outdoor Recreation and Tourism at USU has adopted both Dark Sky Cooperatives. We're no longer orphaned. And so I'm really excited to see what happens and embrace that change, and hopefully some new perspective and ideas come with that. Clarifying groups, purposes, activities, and interaction, that's huge. Making sure that we have clear communication channels, that we know who does what. Again, assess redundancy, trying to be more efficient. This is huge for me, defining who sets the direction. Should that come from the Dark Sky Cooperative? Should it come from people who live in these places? Should it come from the Institute? All good questions, something we could address. And then formalizing critical relationships. Even though this has moved to Utah State University, we still value University of Utah's involvement and want to see that involvement moving forward. I mean, the Dark Sky Studies minor is huge. So how do we work with these different entities? University of Utah, IDA Utah, all these different organizations. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Jake, who's going to talk about the Western Night Skies Council.
Thanks, Aubrey. Yeah, so the Western Night Skies Council is, I guess, a similar effort, but at a different scale. So just some of the backstory. The Western Night Skies Council covers more of a regional focus. So it is really the Western United States in general. So it captures a lot of different organizations like Dark Sky Cooperatives across multiple states. Because what we were really learning as I started to engage in this kind of work with Aubrey is that people are really doing amazing things and inspiring things all across the Western United States. What we really observed was a lot of this is being done in isolation. Maybe it's isolated to a specific geography, like IDA Utah is only working in Utah, and IDA Arizona is in Arizona, and the Dark Sky Cooperative out of Idaho is doing something. So they were being done geographically isolated as well as organizationally isolated. So we found that people weren't really sharing lessons learned or things that they were doing, programs, funding. They weren't really talking about these things at a larger scale. And again, the Dark Sky efforts are at a scale often beyond one organization or one state or one municipality. So me personally, I wasn't doing anything amazing or inspiring when it comes to dark sky preservation. I will be honest about that. I did meet some amazing people, Aubrey being one of them, and talking to her about her work on the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative. It really related to some work that I was doing, bringing gateway communities together to solve bigger regional problems. And so for me, working with gateway communities, some of the challenges were the same. People were working kind of in silos. There was a need for greater communication. There was need for someone to share and be a repository for resources. And there was a need for someone to help connect other people. So it seemed like lessons that were being learned with gateway communities could be applied to the dark sky work that was really needed here in the region. So our solution to that was to create a platform for people to connect. So we created this council, which was bringing people together to talk about challenges. We do that continually through some gatherings, which are really fun, engaging opportunities for people across the region to get to know each other, to talk, and to share their experiences. We've also done webinars that are a little bit more about information, talking about really interesting challenges as well as people's solutions to those challenges. And those are done quarterly. And then we created a web page where people can get a hold of interesting web sources of information. And I'll share in the chat our website as an opportunity for people to look at that. That has recordings from all of our gatherings as well as webinars if anybody's interested in former recordings of some of our presentations. As well, when it comes to resources, we had an opportunity to mine our group for some of the things that they found really helpful. And Aubrey put together what's called a link tree, which provides a one-stop shop for resources that other people had either developed or they knew about that they felt were important. The Western Night Skies Council is really regional in scope, but we've had international people joining and sharing their insights as well, which has been really, really fun. Some things that are hard, challenges. It's really hard to measure the success of this group. We've tried, and I'll share with you some of the results of us trying to ask the question in reality, like, are we helping? Are we actually pushing the needle here? Or are we just getting together to get together? So we asked some really simple questions in this survey of anybody that had been involved in one of our events. And we asked them, to what degree do you agree or disagree with these statements? So for example, the content delivered or the content covered during the gathering was relevant to their community. And if they agreed, it was a 5. If they disagreed, it was 1. And these are some of the averages. So I'll go through some of these questions. People felt like they learned something that they didn't know prior, so they were getting new knowledge. People felt like they had a deeper understanding of the subject matter after they attended, and they felt like they were able to apply this in their organization or community. And overall, they felt like the quality exceeded their expectations. I'm not sure what their expectations were, but we obviously exceeded them, which was really exciting to see. So we feel like the Western Night Skies Council is providing information and filling a gap that was there existing that needed to be filled. We also asked people to rank what they felt was most valuable and least valuable from their Western Night Skies Council gatherings. And I thought it was kind of interesting. The first thing that people thought was important or valuable was that they were able to connect with other people in other communities and other organizations. Like just the opportunity to get in a virtual room with people and communicate was the most valuable thing they felt. Second was they were able to meet other subject experts in other subject areas. They were able to learn tools or resources and get access to those. They were able to answer some maybe questions they came with. And then the last thing, this is the average rankings. The fifth was they felt like just getting general knowledge was important as well. So some of the challenges as well, that measuring success, which I feel like we're getting a handle on, but keeping the momentum going. I think in general, people are getting burned out or satiated on webinars and things like that were novel and fun in the era of COVID are maybe not as fun or novel nowadays. Other thing with momentum is I can speak for myself and maybe Aubrey as well, because I know her, but we do this because we care about it, but it's really done in addition to our other real jobs. Aubrey and I are somewhat similar, where it's a little small chunk of what we do, but it takes the potential of the time it could take is much more vast than the time that we really have. So that's been hard, finding bandwidth to put webinars together, and also finding what people really need as everything evolves really quickly when it comes to this type of subject matter. So those are some of the things we're really struggling with right now, and making sure that we, as Aubrey said, find a way to be sustainable moving forward. For Aubrey and I, as we've talked about moving forward, we really think that IDA is a powerful partner for regional collaboration, but we're really not sure what that looks like or how to do it best. And that was one reason when Cooper reached out to us, we were really excited to be able to talk about what we're up to, but also open up an invitation to the folks here in the audience to have an honest conversation about what our roles really are or could be, and how our goals align, or maybe how they don't align, and talk about how we can maximize what we do, what we feel is important with what you do, and what you feel is important. So that's kind of our transition into what we want. We want to have a couple of questions and a conversation with you about your thoughts. And we're going to do that in a couple different ways. One is I have a couple of questions I would love to hear from you using the chat. Then I want to share with you some slides that allow you to interact and slide some slider bars and rank some things to help us understand your opinion. We'll talk a little bit about those, and then we'll just have a group discussion about surrounding a couple of key questions. So I'm going to, if you can open up your chat, you guys passed the first test of putting in your thoughts and not entering them. The same sort of format. I'm going to put a prompt in the chat, and I want you to take 1 minute to think about it, and then I'll give you another minute to write up a response regarding it. You can do those things collaboratively, but I like to give you a moment to think. And then don't submit it until I ask you, so that they all come in at the same time. So the question is, what do you think the optimal role of the Utah IDA chapter is with regards to regional night skies efforts? What do you think is your optimal role? So I'll give you a minute to think about it, and another minute to respond. So 2 total minutes to think about this and type it in, and then I'll ask for you to submit your opinions. All right, if you take a second to type, if you haven't already, type up your response or thoughts. I'll give you about 30 seconds to type that in. All right, if you can, please take a second and hit enter or submit. If you're still typing stuff, that's totally fine to go ahead and finish up. But share your thoughts with us. All right, let's look at some of that, and I'll just kind of summarize or look through these in real time with you. So feel free to read it along with me. So sharing ideas. Yeah, dark skies don't care much about state borders, unfortunately, or fortunately, right? Having guides or resources that can help communities. An overarching support group. Yeah, I think that idea of having a statewide reach with local implementation is really strong. I think that's something that that IDA brings to the table that I think is really strong. And Aubrey, if you see any of these that you think you'd like to talk to, please interrupt me. We find at Western Night Skies Council, I think Aubrey as well, like, I like that you said support group, because sometimes it's nice just to get with people that are struggling with the same thing and just talk it through. We found a lot, it is a little bit of group therapy along with training that I think is helpful. Structure to organizations and collaborating. Focus on outreaching to Utahns. I think that is one of the strengths, is IDA Utah is made up of members that know what's going on in their local communities and can speak to that, which I think is really strong. Involving government agencies. I think that is another strength of IDA, that part of your mission or efforts to push forward initiatives and policies, I think is a really strong role that IDA can play. An umbrella organization, providing support and resources, getting information out, helping with structure, cloning Shelby. Richard, do you have a beat on that? I could use some cloning as well for lots of awesome people in my organizations.
Shelby's just been a dynamo and has accomplished so much. I wish we had a few dozen of her.
Yes, well said, well said. So my second question is similar but slightly different, and I want you to do the same thing. Take a second to think about this question. What do you think is the optimal role of a dark sky cooperative, like the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative, the Basin and Range Dark Sky Cooperative, with regards to regional night skies efforts? So this is sort of the counterpoint to the question about IDA, which was internal to you. Now you're looking at an organization like what Aubrey's been involved in, or myself has been involved in. What do you think our optimal role is in this sort of playing field? So I'm going to start my timer again. Give you some about a minute and 20 seconds to think about it and type it up, and then submit it. So don't submit it until I ask you again. All right, I'll give you about 10 more seconds. Finish up your ideas, get them typed in, and then I'll have you submit them here in 15 seconds. All right, go ahead and submit what your thoughts are. So it seems like a great idea until I have to try to read them really fast. All right, so bringing entities together in a region to organize efforts, I think those are great ideas. Helping people keep in touch with big movements, yeah. Yeah, that's it's interesting. Wayne brings up this idea of like sort of a grassroots view of things. That's maybe feels a little more grassroots as well, just by virtue of their title and the spaces they work in. Pooling resources, bringing official quote unquote entities together, and often the folks that can't participate in advocacy, yeah, it creates a different space for them. Bringing larger awareness to IDA chapters, yeah, and I think that's an interesting, and I'd like to talk about it maybe later about, does IDA work across state lines? Meaning, like, do you work closely with Idaho IDA or Arizona IDA? Do you know people by name there, or would you be willing to enable to call them? Maybe we can have a conversation about that. Yeah, Linda, you're reinventing the wheel with each new effort, right? I think a lot of people would very much feel that same way. And what we've heard a lot of, I think, Aubrey, is a lot of people feel like they're the first people that are having to develop a night sky ordinance, or they're the very first community that's ever had this situation happen, or the very first community that's had billboards coming in that are going to affect something, right? Like, the reality is very rarely are you the first. But it may feel that way. And so bringing people together to share those is great. Okay, I want to try something, and I'm going to share my screen. There's a program called Amenity. And if you when I share my screen here, there's a website called menti.com. If you can go to that, either open up another screen or minimize Zoom for a moment, or share your screen, use another screen. Go to menti.com, and then it'll ask you for a code. If you type in that code that you see on the screen, it'll bring you into this, and you can share your thoughts with us. So all of this is anonymous, so you can be honest with us. So I'm going to ask just 4 quick questions, and we'll start with this one. Please go ahead and slide the slider around. To what degree do you feel there's confusion regarding the role of IDA Utah and other regional dark sky cooperative groups? Is it really confusing? Slide the slider all the way to the right. If you're like, nope, things are clear, we know what our roles are, slide it to the left. And if you think it's in the middle, you can leave it in the middle as well. Go ahead and participate on that in your own pace. We'll wait for 15 or 20 seconds. Linda, are you able to get on?
Yeah, did everyone find Menti okay?
I'm not. I've never tried this before. So.
That's totally fine. Let me pull something up that may give me an opportunity.
Options.
Are you able to get into Menti, Linda?
No, I'm not. It said it was disabled. I could not pull up another window.
Oh, okay. Hold on one second.
Okay. All right, let's see.
Let me see if I can share a link with you and if it will work. We want your opinion, Linda.
I have it on my computer now, but it's not. Now my Zoom screen is hiding. So let's see. I can't. I'm not sure how to put them both up at the same time, side by side.
You can also use your telephone or your smartphone if you have a phone.
Oh, let me do that.
Yeah, yeah, just go to menti.com on your phone.
I'll also put the code in the chat for anyone that.
Yeah, actually, Aubrey, I
reference
can throw this in. This is direct linked to the actual one.
Awesome.
Okay, so it looks like
we're too new age and technical here.
So I'm going to move on to the next question. We'll get your thoughts.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I
perfect.
feel like I'm holding things up here.
No, so it looks like people feel there's a little bit of confusion, maybe more than average, regarding IDA and other dark sky cooperative groups, right? Part of the reason we're here, I guess. So second question is about redundancy. To what degree do you feel there's redundancy in the efforts of Utah IDA and other regional dark sky cooperative groups like Colorado Plateau or Basin and Range? No redundancy on the left to like tons. And then these are not technical terms, right? Lots versus a little, but just your general thoughts, your general feeling of how much redundancy do you feel there is in the efforts that you're doing in IDA Utah versus the work of other dark sky cooperatives? So I'll give you 10 or 15 seconds to think about that one, and then let us know your thoughts. Yeah, great comment in the chat. The Consortium for Dark Sky Studies is another potential organization that can create redundancies, perhaps, in the work that you're doing, that we're doing. So it looks like about the same, 3.5 out of 5. So there is some potential redundancies in the work that we're doing. And it looks like there's a few people that must have voted pretty low, and then a lot of people voted in that 4 range, it seems. Okay, so next question is a sorting question. From highest to lowest, what do you think are the greatest strengths of IDA, of the work you're doing? And in Menti, you can drag those bars up and down and rank them from first, like the highest value you bring to the dark skies universe, and all the way to 10th, like not that important. This is a tougher question, so I'm going to give you a little bit more time to think through this one.
To be clear, are you trying to rank IDA as a whole or IDA Utah as a subgroup?
IDA Utah.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead when you're ready. Just shuffle those things around in order. It's a pretty tough question because a lot of them are really powerful and credible strengths. Yeah, keep up. As soon as you do it, it'll upload and it'll kind of be in real time what other people are thinking. It looks like about three or four people have, yeah, we'll go till like 5 or 6 people have submitted. So things are shuffling a little bit, but to some degree, it seems to be that lobbying, advocacy, working with municipalities, the volunteer structure that you have, support and like sort of a larger national organization or international organization, the ability or the responsibility to develop standards, an organizational structure based on committees. You're based within a specific state, so knowing your specific area, and then you having a clear mission statement from headquarters, and then the last being a paid membership structure. Looks like first and second are tied now. Advocacy and lobbying are tied. Okay, so last of these questions is another ranking question, and it's ranking. What do you think are the greatest strengths of regional collaboratives like the Southeastern Utah Natural Night Skies Reserve, the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative, and the Western Night Skies Council, for example? That's obviously not expansive in all the things that are, all the other organizations that are out there. But what do you think are their greatest strengths ranked from top to bottom? So again, I'll give you a few minutes to shuffle these around and let us know what you think are the greatest strengths. All right, it looks like people are starting to share their thoughts, which is great. Thank you. Okay, I'll wait for a couple more people to share their thoughts. Okay, so a little bit of shuffling at the end. It looks like first and second again tied, that there's a value, or maybe that's highest strength or greatest strength is that it is beyond state and political boundaries, and also that the goals are coming from stakeholders rather than like an overarching mission from a headquarters somewhere. The cooperative organization model, the idea that it's based on a bunch of groups all working together, that it isn't owned by a single entity, that there's not somebody to point to necessarily if something, if somebody doesn't like a policy. There's no political affiliation. It's it's focused on implementation and working with municipalities, and then it's supporting IDA programs, and then similar in, these are very similar actually, that funding is not from membership. So in both of these situations, it looks like the membership structure is not as important as maybe the mission and the efforts, and the organizational structure perhaps of how they get things done, which is really interesting. I don't know if that's because this group thinks about organizational structure the same way, or just those are the strengths that you perceive. So that helps hopefully lay kind of a foundation of how we feel about these different organizations, about what they bring to the table. And now I want to give Aubrey a moment to talk a little bit about having a conversation or facilitating a conversation amongst us about where we move forward from here.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks for facilitating that. And I hope Menti was fun and exciting for you, because it was really cool for me to just see the perspectives, and it's helpful to understand how we each see each other and how we can work together. So originally we were going to do some breakout rooms, but I think with this smaller group, we'll just have kind of a conversation. So you're welcome to voice your comments, or if you feel more comfortable using the chat, that's totally fine. So we have another question for you, and I'll put it in the chat. That question is, what do you see as an optimal relationship between IDEA Utah and these different collaborative efforts? How can we work together? How does that relationship improve? These are some questions I've had for a long time, and I know I've talked to many of you about what this could look like, but really we'd love to see how we can better collaborate. So feel free to voice your comments or put them in the chat. I'll just pause for a couple minutes if anyone wants to speak up and just tell us what you think. I hear some typing, so we'll give you a couple more minutes. So it looks like this group's more comfortable using the chat feature. Okay, we got a couple of comments from Wayne. It takes communication one-on-one or in group chat should be on a recurring basis. So improving communication, I 100% agree. Communication is key, and clarity is key as well. Again, communication is important via newsletters, etc. Thanks, Linda. Jordan says regular established communication channels to check in on all of these initiatives internally. You all mentioned communication. That's super interesting. Since communication is so important, how do we communicate? This has been hard for me. I'm like, who do I talk to at IDA Utah if I want to communicate? Is it Cooper? Is it Aaron? Is it someone else? And I know there's different focus groups that you've created as well that have different goals, like the lighting ordinance committee. I know Wayne's involved with that. What's the best way to communicate? Yeah,
that's what I was just going to bring up, Aubrey, is that by going to someone who has already done a lot of work on the different policies, we came to you, and because of what you had done with Colorado, we were able to pull a great deal of information that we didn't have to recreate it again.
I'm so glad you didn't have to recreate it. It took a while to create some of those resources, and I definitely pulled from others who had gone before. So no, that's great to hear. We got a couple more comments come in. Official cooperatives versus grassroots IDA ? For the cooperatives, you are invited to join the meetings. For IDA Utah, anyone can join. In practice, it seems like we both do grassroots organizing efforts. It's a great insight, and and likewise, you're invited to participate in any other of these meetings. The Western Night Skies Council is something I'm super excited about, and grateful for Jake and USU and the NAR initiative for being willing to kind of, see what this could turn into. And so anyone on this call that would like to participate, you're more than welcome. Our next gathering is actually a week away. So if you have an interest, please let me know. We'll have you join, and you can just listen in. Let's see, one other comment. We have people in each that are part of more than one. So setting these people as communicators in between is a good idea. Agreed, absolutely agree. And I think having some guidelines on regular communication, what does that look like? I know in my office, and Jordan can attest to this, we don't really have set guidelines for communication. So sometimes there's miscommunication, or we're not all on the same page, and that can lead to different frustrations. And I mean, we're all people, and sometimes you can have emotions get involved or misunderstandings. And so I firmly believe communication is key to any kind of collaborative effort. So great comments.
Aubrey, I'm curious. I mean, I think this idea of communication, or the lack, maybe the historic lack thereof, or maybe not transparent communication across different groups. I'm curious what kind of information is really key to communicate, or what do you want to know? And maybe Aubrey, or what do we want to know, or what should we know, and what should you know about what's happening in these different efforts that was highlighted? You know, we're both trying to do the same thing, right? Like, to that idea of interest versus position. All of our interest is to improve night skies, right? Like, how do we all pull in the same direction? Any thoughts on what needs to be communicated, or what you'd like to know?
I'll just say one thing that I find, like, I know I've used Aubrey as a resource several times this way, is just like as a Rolodex, like, as I want someone who lives in Southern Utah who is interested in X or whatever, and then that, Aubrey knows who that is, right? And I think that having, I don't know how we make that a kind of a cohesive thing altogether, but to me, it would be really helpful. I mean, IDA has its own member list. Not all of, you all maybe are IDA members. So that seems like one thing that is, yeah.
Thanks, Anil. And it goes both ways. I've reached out to you too for, like, who do I talk to about this thing? So answering questions and helping each other kind of find the right people, and networking, that's huge too. Looks like Paul has a comment.
Yeah, something similar to that, but I think each of the groups should kind of define their roles a little bit better. And then when one group sees somebody asking for a particular help or quest or something, they know exactly who to go to and where to get that help. And then, like, if, let's say, somebody wanted to become an IDA member, but they reached out to the Western Night Skies Council, we would know who to send them to on Utah IDA for getting that rolling and stuff like that. And like, IDA needs like letters of support when people are looking for a dark sky, whatever. And so it'd be like, okay, well, maybe we can get somebody from the Colorado Plateau to write a support letter or something for that area or something. So just knowing what each of the groups can do, so each group knows who to reference to get something done.
Absolutely. And that's been, I guess that could be another challenge, is when do I send this person to this entity for this issue? And when there's redundancy, it's kind of hard to know exactly where do they go, who does what. So if there's a way for us to kind of look at our different roles, our different capabilities, and things that we're involved with, then I think it's clear on how to direct people and help them find what they need. Great comment, Paul. We do have one final question, and then we'll wrap things up and let you get on with your lovely Tuesday evening. I just put it in the chat, and you're welcome to respond again verbally or in the chat. We'll do this one pretty quickly, but how do we work towards the same goals while reducing confusion and redundancy? This kind of ties into Paul's comment. Any thoughts on this one? And thank you for helping us tackle these wicked problems. Bob the Monster hasn't been much help recently, so we're just hoping that this brain trust can help us out.
I think somebody like IDA Utah, we need to figure out what we should be helping with, where we can be helping with, and to what level that we want to do things. Like, do we want to lead a designation, or do we want to support them? Something like that. And once that is done, then somebody like the Colorado Plateau can be like, okay, so since they're not leading it, maybe we can decide on how to help lead them, or do we lead them, or do we help them more in a regional aspect? and just like where maybe this kind of stuff comes from. Like if, like, let's say another city decides that they want to have a dark sky designation for their city, who leads that? If it's not in the Colorado Plateau, I would assume that the Colorado Plateau wouldn't really be helping them quite as much. So who would it fall on to next? Would that be like the Western Night Skies Council that would take over that? Just figuring out maybe where the group boundaries lie, and their responsibilities. But I think that needs to come from a conversation in each place, but having communication with each one, so you don't come up with something and all of a sudden be like, oh wait, I thought we were doing that here, or I thought we were doing that there.
Absolutely. I kind of see a Venn diagram of all these different entities, and then we can see where there's overlap and where there's gaps. I mean, I've definitely made assumptions in the past. Oh, I'm sure they have support from X organization, but they may not. So absolutely. Any other final comments or anything you want to put in the chat? Okay, we've got one more. We've already started this by knowing who is in what organization, what they do, and have contact information to afford communication. Just like when I contacted Aubrey to see what had already been developed for teaching communities or legislative leaders, what Night Skies in our area is all about. So yeah, maintaining contact list, who's who and who does what. As someone who was involved with the Consortium for Dark Sky Studies, I feel like a large part of its early success was the ability to bring a wide range of folks, city, county, state officials, NPS folks, IDA, volunteers, etc. I don't feel like there is any environment like that over the past couple of years, but maybe Western Night Skies Council is that now. Definitely want to create a platform where people can come together and communicate for sure, and also but definitely not replacing the consortium. They have a role to play. Super important. We need strong research, and they can do things that Western Night Skies Council can't. So maybe we can just support each other along those lines. Possible, put together a bio on each group and create a directory, a working document of who's who. I love that idea. That's fantastic. I could see a website where you come like, I want to know about Dark Skies, and here's all the different players and what they do and when you should reach out to them. Let's see, assessing strengths, interests between each group is a wonderful starting place. What does IDA Utah want to prioritize? What does the cooperative want to prioritize? How do they complement each other? Can one entity take on more of the policy work, whereas another takes on outreach and volunteer work? If tasks or objectives could be delegated, then there could be greater understanding in what each entity offers. I'm a strong believer in delegation. It's something I struggle with, but in a collaborative effort, delegation is key to getting work done. One person can't do it all, so leaning on each other for sure. One final comment, I like the idea of a clearinghouse for info. I am very involved with IDA Colorado, but also want us to be connected as Western states. Absolutely. And that's really the mission of the Western Night Skies Council, is increase communication, collaboration, and connection among us all. Because like Jake said, we all have a similar interest, and we can support each other as we work towards our different positions. So with that, are there any final comments today? I know we covered a lot of information. We shared some different examples, and I just want to invite you, let's keep this conversation moving forward. I think we brought up some great points today and tackled some wicked problems that maybe don't have an answer right now, but I'd love to continue this conversation with IDA Utah. So if you're okay with that, I guess, Cooper, what's the best way to continue this conversation, would you say?
That's a good question. I mean, I think most folks here have your contact information and will probably be contacting you. So if you are okay with that, that seems like a good next step. But I think we could also, as different groups and entities, circle back and maybe have a more formal meeting to kind of hash out, discuss a little more, which I think
absolutely
would be really, so yeah, I think any or all of the above.
Sounds great. Jake, any other final comments from your end?
Yeah, just I guess a big, huge thank you for Cooper and IDA Utah for allowing Aubrey and I to I guess, have an open conversation about where we're at, what our intentions have been with any of the work we've done, and I guess really an opportunity or an invitation to work together. And like was mentioned, you know, how do we find the best in each of what we do, and then leverage that? I think just it seems simple, but it's always complicated. But I think just to clear the air that we're all in the same, we're all engaged in the same effort, and hopefully we've laid out what we think our strengths and weaknesses are, and been honest about what's going well and what's not, and then hopefully we can have a conversation moving forward that with that foundational understanding of where we all sit, where some of the strengths and weaknesses are, and then hopefully push the needle forward on something we all care a lot about. So it's been really our pleasure to spend some time with you this evening.
Yeah, thanks everyone. That's dedication, showing up on a Tuesday evening for sure.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thanks. Thanks so much to Aubrey and Jake. This has been really great. And thanks to all of you who attended tonight, our Utah folks and also Colorado. It's really wonderful to see all of you and to have this conversation. So thanks very much.
Thanks everybody.
Yeah.